Welcome to the Women of Ambition podcast. I am your host, Alyssa Calder-Hume. The Women of Ambition podcast explores female ambition. First, the radical act of acknowledging it within ourselves. Second, allowing space to explore what ambition means for each of us. And third, harnessing and developing our drive. I define ambition as a neutral trait, a personality trait, an inner drive to do or achieve success, typically requiring determination and hard work. And one of the goals of the show is to show how that trait is exhibited in women's lives, regardless of their job title or financial compensation. Meaning is found when we couple this neutral trait with our deepest values and life purposes. And as we learn from each other, our goal is to destigmatize female ambition and help women harness their drive to align with their unique values to create a joy-fueled life of achievement. And to that end, we're discussing goal setting with our next few guests throughout the month of January. Today we have Shay Domingez here. She's a comedian. She has a podcast called Level Up, and she's a content creator. And today she's going to share her story with us of growing up in a small town of 600 people in Illinois and choosing to pursue her bigger dreams and move across country and make her life her own. So thank you so much for being with us today, Shay.
Thank you for having me, Alyssa. I appreciate it.
I'm so excited to hear a little bit more about this huge life change that you have chosen for yourself. Truly an ambitious act to go and pursue some of your major goals. Can you talk about what it was like growing up in a small town and then the transition to choosing at some point to go to Los Angeles from a town of 600?
Yeah. So my town of 600 people, Shipman, Illinois, it was all I knew.
Mm-hmm.
It was all I knew. And I was also, when I was in first grade, I knew I was gay.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew that what I wanted to be wasn't what everybody else wanted me to be, like very early age. And so I think that was really an underlying factor of living in a small town. Some people are fine with that because they can be farmers or they can be teachers or they can be whatever and kind of make it through pretty easily, being themselves. So I think growing up in a small town, I had to find outlets.
Mm-hmm.
And so what those outlets were mostly comedy. Were mostly taking the attention away from me.
Mm-hmm.
And putting, some humor out there. And I say me as in the parts that weren't accepted.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Was it a traditional small town in that it was very conservative?
Yes. And I grew up in a Catholic home. My grandma was very Catholic. My parents, we weren't religious as far as going to church, but we were religious as far as, I guess, the practice or the teachings of it.
Sure.
And I would say mostly the guilt and the shame and the shame more than anything. I don't know, my mom never went over any Bible verses or anything, but she knew what was right and what was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, very conservative town.
Were there other openly gay people around that you could look up to?
My cousin, she is about 10 years older than me. So she was in a different generation. I even saw the relationship that my family had with her and her partner. It wasn't the best relationship. She was kind of off on her own in the city where she would be more accepted.
Mm-hmm.
And the family just kind of treated her as a one-off type of thing. So that's what I saw. As far as role models, that was my role model. Like, great that she's living her life, but seeing how other people perceived her living her life didn't give me the freedom or the perception of freedom that I could just kind of go out there and be who I was. So yes, it was very hard in that I couldn't really be free. So I think that's really how I developed comedy, and humor. Is to kind of take the attention away from those parts and making fun of myself or being silly. I would fly full force into like a mat, like at the end of the gym, under the basketball hoop, just like do silly stuff like that to kind of take the focus away from who I really was. And then I think they kind of meshed together. I think they kind of came together and became this really cool thing where I can express comedy in not shameful ways anymore, not ways to hide, but in ways to shed light on things.
Yeah,
So
that's really cool.
it kind of turned.
When did that transformation happen for you? Where it became just like I'm taking control of the conversation and focus away to this is actually part of how I communicate.
Honestly, probably about the past year.
Wow.
When I started stand-up comedy, which I have done improv comedy for over 7 years. I always took stand-up was like, that's not my thing. It's scary. I pushed it away. And stand-up has given me so much, not only to show me that I can do what I thought I couldn't do before, and that it's still scary. I'm not gonna sit here and say, oh, it's not as scary. It's scary every single time for me. But I've been able to push myself to talk about things that I haven't talked about before and make fun of them in a way, make fun of trauma or make fun of stuff that I literally have not been able to speak. Speaking is so important. Even saying the word lesbian was uncomfortable for me over a year ago.
Wow.
But speaking that word in front of a ton of other people, it lessens the shame.
Yeah.
That was really when I discovered, I can use this as a healing power, as a healing tool, can use my comedy as more than just making people laugh. I can really heal myself and help others relate to that type of healing and relate to, even if they're not gay, relate to me in ways that they could feel shame. And that's been very recently. After high school, I played basketball at a couple colleges. I didn't really want to go to college, but I have a lot of educators in my family, my mom being a big one. And she really pushed me to go to college. And not only did I get my bachelor's, I went ahead and went straight into my master's and got my master's. A year after graduating with master's in marketing, I was like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to sit behind a desk and work for whoever.
So that's interesting because you were achieving, doing really, setting really big goals, but it wasn't in alignment with what you actually wanted.
It was what everybody else wanted.
Yeah. And that's so important to our conversation here because we can all do amazing things. The women of this podcast, we're all awesome. We're smart. We're on top of it. But when you don't know yourself, you're wasting time. You're just treading water. It's not fulfilling. So what did you do at that point when you were like, this doesn't work for me?
I kept exploring. I worked at Starbucks part-time. I worked part-time as a personal trainer. So I was really into personal fitness and nutrition. I think most of it coming from shame, coming from, I want to know how to be better at this so I can be this fit person and this person who, has this six pack and has this nice body and whatever, so I can feel better about myself. So I would really study those things. And so it helped me, it gave me an income for a while, but I still knew that wasn't what I wanted. I still felt it, I should say. I still felt that yearning of something else. And so at Starbucks, a coworker, he invited me to this improv comedy club, and I started taking classes there. It was still very scary. I was still scared of being in front of people, of possibly being judged, just stuck on stage with that, just being frozen. I still had that fear. But at the same time, I was like, I'm pretty good at this because I've always been that person who's in a conversation. And if something goes sideways, I can be like, well, this funny thing, or make this attention go away. So I think that's something just to pay attention to is like, if you're kind of good at something and you enjoy it, even though you're scared, like follow that fear. So that's what I did. And I went through that whole program and I said, I want to go bigger. I still knew that St. Louis, even though it's a city, was not where I wanted to be. It was too cold. That was one thing. And I've always been drawn to LA, as a lot of people who are in LA, like you just feel drawn to it. And so I decided to move. And during that time, I had gotten really into personal development. I had started reading books. One in particular, Lewis Howes, School of Greatness. He really motivated me to really go and move. And it was I wasn't prepared. I wasn't financially prepared.
That's the story for so many people. I also moved to LA with no
Okay.
job, so I understand.
Yeah. And I called out there, you know, I tried to do as much as I could. I called out there. I talked to a Starbucks store where I wanted to live. I kind of had that within the first week, a job at Starbucks, which was nice.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had an Airbnb booked for 40 days. So I had a little bit of a deadline, but I was still taken care of, you know. But that typical LA story of I lived on somebody's couch for a month for $1,000, which is ridiculous, crazy high. And then I lived in a studio apartment with a roommate with 2 beds in there. We barely even saw each other because we mostly just slept there. You know, otherwise we were out working or creating whatever. I wasn't ready financially, but mentally, spiritually, I was ready to get out. I was ready to jump. And that seems like a big move, even when I look back on my life, but it's so cool that just set me up for the next big move. Because you think, okay, like it doesn't get any less scary, but you get prepared by taking that first step.
I think you just get more comfortable living in the fear and doing it anyway. I think for me, it's actually become a guidepost. Like what can I think of that is the most terrifying thing that I could do? That's the thing that I should do, because that's where I'm going to grow the most. It's going to feed me and push me to greater heights.
Yeah. What's so interesting about that is, you know, jumping in a tub full of spiders scares the crap out of me, right? But it's not necessarily aligned with what I want to do, you know, who I want to be. So I think finding that, again, knowing who you are and then following that fear that goes along with who you are, because there are some things that I feel like, you know, I'd be scared to do, but it's like, I don't even need to focus on that because it has nothing to do with where I want to go. It's just that thing that you're kind of ignoring, you're kind of pushing away, like that is the thing to jump into.
Whether it's running away from healing trauma or being vulnerable to thousands of people up on stage.
Yeah. It's the pain, which I've learned, I think also through stand-up, running to the pain, towards the pain is something that needs to be done. I started going to therapy since the pandemic started. And
Same.
Yes. And that has been such an amazing healing process because I have actually gone into the pain and I haven't run away from it. I haven't been like, okay, this is something that I feel bad about, but you know what? I should just feel good about it. I know that to move forward in life, I just need to feel good about it. I just need to be confident. I need to do all of this stuff. But then realizing where it's like, maybe I'm not too confident about doing stand-up. Why am I not too confident, and kind of digging in that? Oh, well, because I've had past experiences where I have been very embarrassed and scared of being judged. And that's okay. That's okay that I feel that way. But at the end of the day, are you going to do the thing that you're scared of? Confident or not? I think that's just the decision that we have to make, that I had to make.
And it's serving you, it seems like.
Absolutely. Yes.
How does it affect your creativity?
It takes the pressure away.
Interesting.
Because I'm not trying to be perfect. I don't have to come from a place of perfection to create what I want to create. It's
You're
so
not
interesting.
seeking validation through it anymore.
Right.
Yeah. That's cool.
I was watching a YouTuber the other day, Liza Koshy. Hilarious. She's so funny. And, you know, I make YouTube videos as well. And I'm like, man, you know, maybe I could do this style. I could do this type of thing. But what we are creating could possibly have like never been done before. And I think we get in these visions of like, well, this is a good YouTuber. I should follow that because that's proven to do this. But sticking with your weirdness and your creativity and making something that looks nothing like that other person that you admire, but still being awesome and hilarious is so exciting because you can envision as much as you want. But I think sometimes what's out there is so much better that you don't even realize. You could get stuck so much on this vision that you kind of lose sight of all of the other possibilities that could be out there. So I think, sticking with that weirdness of I don't have to be perfect to create but at the same time, what I create is perfect. Like it's kind of, it's kind of wild in that way.
That's so freeing and beautiful.
Yeah.
How do you feel now that you kind of have gained some momentum in coming back to yourself and coming to know yourself? And I'm sure that is an ever evolving process, but what does it feel like to be living in that state where you're really in tune, maybe relative to where you used to be?
I used to be trying to control everything. Why is this person not getting back to me? I would try to control that situation with my thoughts. I would control it in a way of this person's not getting back to me because they're mad to me. They're mad at me because they don't respect me, because they don't do all of this stuff. That's control, because I'm trying to justify of why this one particular thing isn't happening. And so I feel now where I've learned a lot through experience. I've read a lot of books. I meditate. I have all of these practices to remind me that I only have control over myself and over the thoughts that I think. So if I find that a thought comes up, a thought still comes up, and it's like this person isn't getting back to me, I can now see that thought and see it as me trying to control something, and then sitting back and being like, I have no idea what's happening. I have no idea what's happening. We make up this world in our heads, right? Of these situations, but I have no idea what's happening. And I think controlling more of what I can control has given me more freedom. And that way has given me more momentum, because I feel momentum when I have freedom. I felt stuck when I was trying to control everything. Things weren't moving fast enough. They just would not have. And I'm sure even if they were moving at a very quick pace, I wouldn't have noticed. It wouldn't have been fast enough for me because I needed to control that aspect for whatever reason.
It's so interesting that that's your past and that you're a comedian and a content creator. And I think a lot of people who listen to this are creative in some way, and it's changing from a place of trying to manufacture or control the response that you're getting from your audience versus being authentic and allowing whatever experience is out there that's going to happen. Because there's lots of science behind comedy and getting, responses from audiences. And there's lots of things that you can put into your act or your creations. Do you still have to balance that to some degree, or are you just like fully in your own zone and whatever the response is, you just like roll with it? Because I could see that really sucking you back into that world of control.
I think there is a balance. You have to put out what you want to, but you also don't want to put out stuff that people don't like. In the way that you get feedback.
Yeah.
And you get feedback by how many people are watching, if they're being entertained by it. And then you experiment. Then you continue to experiment. I was watching a YouTuber the other day who I love, Sunny Lenarduzzi. She is an entrepreneur and she makes YouTube videos. And she said the other day, experimentation over expectation.
I love that.
So experiment, and you have to let those expectations go, but you also have to be in the zone of like, I want to get better at this. I want to serve my audience in a better way while still respecting my creative process. So how can I do that best? I also fully believe that everything that happens to us, a couple of things, is for a reason, and it's an opportunity to learn something. I think everything is an opportunity to learn something. So when you get 2 likes on a video, and this sounds so small, but when you get 2 likes on a video, and I still do sometimes, if I try something new out, I still do, say thank you. I'm a big believer in gratitude as well, but when you see those 2 likes, it could be an opportunity to learn of how to make your content better. It could be an opportunity to learn, you know what? I'm still putting out this stuff that I enjoy. And thank you for those 2 likes. Because if I'm not grateful for those 2 likes, I'm not going to get 2,000. And when you get 2,000, you're not going to be happy.
Yeah.
I want to be able
to, if your inner needs haven't been met, then it doesn't matter.
Yeah. I want to be happy getting 2 likes. I want to be happy getting 2 likes because I put my stuff out there, because I didn't hold back.
See, and isn't that kind of like a mind-bending goal for content creators to be like, my goal isn't to get X amount of audiences. My goal for my inner self is to be at peace, no matter the number.
Yeah, that has been a big piece, I think, of this past year is peace. I was watching a video the other day where Will Smith said, you know, you don't want to strive for happiness, because happiness it comes and goes. But what you want to strive for is peace, being at peace, whether you're happy or unhappy, or whether you're just content. So peace is, yes, it's definitely the goal. But of course, I want to get better at what I do. Yeah. I want to be successful in what I do. So being at peace with where you're at and that you're trying, I think is a good place to be. I was also talking with a friend the other day of the balance between discipline and grace. You have to be disciplined, but you have to give yourself grace when there's not enough time in the day, and you spent so much time on this other project that you couldn't start on this other project, whatever it is. And at the end of the day, I think what connects those two, is discipline and grace, is honesty. It's like, are you really honestly doing everything you can to where at the end of the day you'll feel peace? Yeah. So yeah.
I love that. It's so true.
Yeah.
There's the idea I've been thinking about for the last 6 months is contentment and ambition. Can you do both? And where I've landed with that is, I am content when I'm continually growing and learning. And it doesn't really matter how slow or how fast that is, but as I continually stretch myself, that's where I'm content. It's not about achieving a number or not having goals or ambition. It's my continued growth. And that's one of my deep values, and I know for myself. And so I can put that in my life and know that I can feel contentment and also be achieving and getting places. And that's been a really beautiful kind of marriage of ideas for me. Okay, so now we've talked about growing up in a small town, making these huge adjustments. In the meantime, you have moved across country.
Technically, across country is my second time. So to LA and then to Atlanta.
Remaking your whole life with each move. You said the last year you've had a lot of peace. You're doing the hard things, both internally and then also externally. What is next for you?
2022, baby.
It's coming.
It's coming. as you were just speaking about that last component of being content and still being ambitious, I think the connector for me with that is gratitude. And so I feel like, where am I going next? It starts with gratitude. Everything starts with gratitude. I was working as a project manager for a life coach. I'm leaving that to do my own thing, my own video editing, podcast editing, content creating. Of course, I've always done that, but really going out on my own and as a freelancer.
Yeah.
Which can be kind of scary.
See, that's terrifying right there. So you're doing it.
Yeah. And just the fact, because I've been in situations where my thoughts will cycle of that's scary, that's scary, that's scary. And I still hear those things. But the fact that I even get to say this, or that I'm even able to be on this podcast, that I'm able to make people laugh and put content out, I'm just so grateful for that, because I don't know what's next. Mm-hmm. I have plans,
Mm-hmm.
I have plans to build and to grow and to expand my creativity and to work with different people and help them serve their audience. But it's really hard to say what's next, because I think it's ever expanding. There's so many things just as a creative too. There's so many things going on that it's hard. I want to grow in this, and I want to do better in this. I want to be more disciplined with this. It's hard to really nail down what's next. I do have a lot of plans and a lot of wants, but I've discovered that those wants, they kind of have stopped me in the past.
Yeah.
They kind of have slowed me down. I want this thing. So it's like, there's this carrot on a stick that I'm chasing. I want this thing. It's always slowed me down.
Sometimes I feel like the goals I set are based on what I want, but they feel arbitrary, or the circumstances change, or the platforms that are going to reach people change, or so many things are out of control, and the ability to pivot continually. And like you were talking about grace, there's new information, or, this other thing has happened. I like New Year's resolutions, but for me, a lot of the time it's what do I want to feel? And then what are things I can do to help me live in that space, that energetic space, or whatever you want to call it. And those steps have to change sometimes, but that goes against so much personal development stuff where they're like, you want a goal, you define it and you just go for it. And it's like, but it's evolving. I can't, it's a moving target. I don't know how to just kill myself to get to this one thing, because it's just undulating constantly.
At the beginning of the pandemic, I had a goal. I wrote down my goals. I said, I want 30,000 followers over these social media platforms within a couple months. So I think I made them probably in January 2020. By March, April, I had got 23,000 followers on TikTok.
Out of nowhere, probably.
That was just a couple viral videos.
Yeah. It doesn't actually equate to what you are creating or how hard you're working. It just happened to hit right with a certain amount of people.
Yeah. And that was my year goal. So I'm done now.
Yeah.
So goals, I do understand goals. That is not a good goal to have 30, because it could happen overnight. Mm-hmm. So I remember talking to my therapist a while ago, just maybe unhappy about something, frustrated with these outside circumstances. And she just kind of asked me, what's going to make you happy? Truly, what would make you happy? And I said, having the freedom to create my own content, having the freedom. And I don't even want to say content, because that's just a thing. Do you love creating content? I love expressing myself.
Yeah.
Is what I love to do. And those are the platforms that we do it on. Mm-hmm. But I said, I want to have the freedom to create my own content. And she said, well, do you have it right now? Don't you have that freedom right now? And that's what I want. That's what I want. I want to have the freedom to put out my own stuff. So I think as long as I think you have projects and you have specific You know, I on my TikTok, I have these characters, Gary and Mary, and they're these twins and country inspired by my hometown. So thank you for my hometown. But I want to grow with them. I want to just expand that world. I want to bring them into our world to where if you're walking down the street and Gary is right there on the sidewalk, he lives in this world. He lives on this planet. So that's what I want to do. I want to get it in front of more people.
Mm-hmm.
So those aren't like maybe definable goals.
Yeah.
But I just know that if I continue to do what I want every day, which is have the freedom to create my own content, then I'm happy.
Yeah.
Some people are like, well, manifestation, you know, can kind of be BS because you need to take action with it. And I take a lot of action.
Yeah.
I take a lot, and it's inspired action.
Yeah.
It's aligned action. It's not action. Oh, I need to get to this number. So I'm going to do this, you know, every single day, which you need to do that. You should meditate every day, exercise every day. Like there are things that I think for me, keep me in alignment. So I'm able to be what I want to be.
Yeah. In my own goal setting, I've been working on it a lot for the last couple weeks, and I have like different areas I want to grow in, my core values and like the spirituality, like physical, like social, like I have all these other areas I want to grow in, but then there's also a category for manifestation for things that I don't actually know the steps on how I'm going to get there. I don't know, like I have this idea, I have this feeling of the world I want to live in and like the home I want to have and like the relationships I want to have. And I don't always know all the little pieces on how to get there, but it's still a goal for me. It's still something that I want. And honoring the little steps that I know that I can take to like improve my podcast, for example. Like I know that there are things that I can do. Getting a new mic that I got for Christmas, that is one step that I can make this better. And it's tangible, but wanting, like, I would love to expand my circle of friends in my hometown right now. Like I can't really control that. I can put myself out there. I can be vulnerable. I can host events for people to get to know each other, but it's still something I want, still something that is aligned with my values and goals, but I can't control. And so keeping that still in mind, I've found to be really useful. It doesn't have to be one or the other. You don't have to be completely controlling something or completely just like meditating in your bed and hoping life comes together. Like I think it's going to be both. And I think the people who, like the women who identify as ambitious, probably are really good at doing those little steps to get to where they want to be. And it's marrying both the values and the goals and the self-healing so that all of those things can kind of come together. Because a lot of times it's our own mind that says, I can't be happy. Well, you can create anything you want right now. You're just scared of being vulnerable. Like, oh, I'm the one holding me back. It's not because I have a 9-to-5 job. It's myself. And like that's really hard.
Yeah. That's the honesty piece. Getting through all that junk in your head of those thoughts, of those cycle of thoughts that you've been thinking for years. Literally, you have something in your head of what your life will look like. There are so many scenarios that people haven't imagined that are completely possible. And so we get into these cycles of, well, this day is going to look like this next day and so forth. There's those little steps of being honest and taking that step of, yes, well, my 9-to-5 job sucks. I'm going to focus on what I can control. And that's just little steps every single day.
Little tiny stretches at a time. Okay, this has been fantastic.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for talking with us today. I know that you have a podcast also that goes into personal development a little bit. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? Because I think it probably dovetails really well with what we're chatting about.
Yeah. So, I mean, the podcast started at the beginning of the pandemic, and it kind of started a little selfishly because I was like, well, we're all cooped up. I want mentors.
Yeah.
I want people to tell me what they did to achieve success.
This is the same. We are
right?
the same.
Right?
This is an excuse for me to network with other amazing people and learn from them. So yes,
Exactly.
same.
Yeah, I wouldn't just text somebody and say, "Hey, can we grab some coffee?" I can be like, "Hey, can you be on my podcast?"
And I'll get to ask you all of my questions and
Right.
like be in charge of the conversation. Yep.
Exactly. So it started in that way, and I learned how much I loved giving a platform to other people to share their stories and how interested in their stories I was. And I was talking to a friend earlier today about how we're so interested in other people, and I think it's because we're kind of so interested in ourselves in a way, like because we want to grow, right, and learn to help ourselves. So if we can put it on a podcast and help other people, amazing. So it started in that way, and I had a season 1 where I cut it off. I didn't expect to have a season 1 starting. I thought I just started it. Again, it was kind of like with the moving to LA and just jumping. That's how it was. I think I scheduled it, and within the next couple days, I had like 2 interviews, and then it was going out like that next Friday. And so again, I was not prepared. I was just like, I'm going to do it. And there are plus sides and negative sides to those types of decisions. But then I kind of got a little overwhelmed. And so I stopped it at a season. I didn't know if I was going to bring it back. And then I felt the urge a couple months ago to bring it back for a second season that I'm continuing to do every Friday. Now I've just started off the second season telling stories and experiences from my life and lessons that I've learned. And so those are about 15 minutes, but I'm sure later on in the season, I'm going to get in some interviews and to all of these amazing people that I've met in Atlanta, and so many people that I wanted to interview from LA that I'll have on my podcast. But the podcast Level Up with Shay is I want to know how people have leveled up in their lives, what beliefs that they had that they needed to get rid of, or I'll ask them, "Hey, I believe this. Did you also?" And they could be like, no. I've had plenty of those. And so, yeah, it's just a way for people to have those little action steps that they can take for how to level up their lives. Again, whether it's a belief, whether it's more discipline, a way of thinking, a way of, setting goals. Just different types of topics. And to help other people level up. It's great.
I love that. Okay, so people can find you there. Tell us your other places where you're doing comedy and you're doing so many different things. So where can we find you?
Yes. So on Instagram and TikTok, it's Shade Beats, but a lot of people say Shady Beats, SHAYD Beats. Okay. And so Instagram, TikTok, Twitter as well, and then Gary and Mary IG on Instagram. Those are my twinsies. And of course the podcast Level Up with Shay on Instagram. I also have you can go to my website, shadebeats.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
This has been really beautiful. And I hope those listening at home can hear this and see the value in changing their own life and taking those steps and getting comfortable in that space we talked about, where it's not always planned out exactly steps to achievement, but you're still making progress and you're still open to pivoting when new information becomes available, and then also just decoupling your sense of worth from that, the results of your content creation. Just all of that is so essential to that piece that we talked about, and the contentment and just being safe in your own body and with who you are. So we hit on a lot of really awesome things today. Thank you so much for this.
Yeah.
And I look forward to following all the things that you put out there into the world and laughing along with everybody.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, back at you.
All right. Thanks so much. This has been an episode of the Women of Ambition podcast. I'm your host, Alyssa Calder-Hume. This conversation was fantastic. And I love how it feeds into our first episode from season 3 about goal setting. And we will continue to discuss this topic this month, but hold on to your hat if you're feeling a little overwhelmed or burnt out by some of these examples. Next week, we're going to be talking to an expert in burnout and how to avoid that and what that can look like for those of us who may be on overdrive with the goal setting. So don't lose heart and tune in for next week for a good balanced discussion on achievement and health and wellness and avoiding burnout. For more episodes, visit womenofambitionpodcast.com, and we will see you next week.